What is going on, YouTube? This is The Last Musketeer, and welcome to the finale of Punishing Gray Raven. So, over my course of playing this game, there's a few things that I've learned and a few things that I need to talk about that are important for the finale of the free-to-play Is It Worth It series, because I think this one varies from a lot of different gachas that I played in the sense that it does a really good job of making the combat the core part of the game and keeping it front and center towards everything else. I think that when it comes to gachas in particular, generally it's always going to be a major point of emphasis to have really good combat, but also on some occasions the way they have the combat design is not the most intuitive, it's not the most interactive. When it comes to PGR, that is the main focus, is much interaction and as much skill base as you can possibly get in a gacha. Obviously, having the dodge mechanic, which can enter you into a matrix mode as long as it's off cooldown, and being able to use that to your advantage when it comes to using your ping system, which is the main part of your damage abilities. There's just so much going on all at once that it keeps you constantly active, keeps you paying attention, watching boss motions. The animations for the bosses, I will say, are fantastic. They are very telling generally of when things are going to happen, though obviously I don't do the best job of dodging. Like I said, it is not the best gameplay, but it is what I have learned so far. And also, there are a wide variety of playstyles because there are so many different characters, and while some of them are alternate versions of some of the characters, like Lee, for example, who has, I think, a few different versions of himself, and each one is going to play different. They're going to have different skill animations, different ways to activate their abilities to the full potential, and so it is a nice relief of giving a bunch of variety to all of the combat, and plus being able to bring in 3 different characters at the same time. If you were needing specific situations, you can bring one in that is good at a certain thing like defense breaking, or you can have one that's very good with elemental damage. It's just a big variety, a big hero pool, and a bunch of ways to really test things out, because I think every operator, while not all being the best, not all are going to be created equal, obviously they are going to have their uses. So if you are as a free-to-play player, as I am, and don't have the best luck with pulling some of the higher ranked champions, at least know that you are going to be able to do probably all content in the game with the ones that you start out with. You're going to have to focus on making sure they've got the right memory sets and putting as many levels into them as you possibly can, making sure they're as strong as they can possibly be. But that is a good thing to see. Being able to go in and pick a favorite hero regardless of meta and being able to do whatever content you want is the most important aspect when it comes to a gacha game, because if you want to keep your free-to-play players, you're going to have to appease them, and I think they do a pretty decent job at that. One thing I do have a little bit of complaints on are just how long it takes to do a 10 pull, because a lot of times the banners are generally going to come out requiring 60 pulls for the guarantee of that champ. So you're going to have to take a little bit of time saving up, probably a month or 2 worth, just grinding every day and getting the daily amounts of the cards that you can get just to try to get the guarantee on the champion. So there may be some that you miss, which is unfortunate, but like I've said before, any of them can be viable, though some are going to be much better. So kind of just plan ahead when it comes to the free-to-play aspect, and make sure you watch videos on what is coming up in the near future and checking out what is meta if you are really trying to grind and get as good and fast clears as you possibly can. But moving aside from the combat, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the events, because of course events are a very important factor when it comes to games, and I think in this one they are very fleshed out. Now, there are a lot of mini events that you can go and get a little bit of rewards out of each week, which is nice, a little additive there that is usually pretty easy to do for your dailies. But the big event, the one that I've had going on for basically the most of the time that I've been playing this game for the series, has been absolutely insane. So it's added a whole different type of game mode. Obviously the combat is going to be pretty similar, but being a roguelite type style, it's got a really nice, different mechanic to it that I've been very much enjoying. Though I will say they are very long runs if you're actually trying to do a run. Sometimes it takes me up to 2 hours to do a full completion, which, if you were enjoying the game a lot, is a great thing. And not to mention that the final boss, which I'll play later, is an absolutely beautiful fight, and it's always good to see, especially coming from something that is a phone game, a gacha game at that, being able to weave in a bunch of lore, really nice boss fights, and beautiful animation into an event is always something I'm stoked to see, because you never want them to neglect a specific part of the gacha experience. If you were just putting things out as a money grab, then it's not going to be as appealing to everyone. But putting in that much effort, you know they definitely care about the actual player base. They may not make things obviously the most free-to-play friendly, but there are a lot of ways for you to enjoy the game regardless. And I think just based on the combat and the event system alone, I would say that this game is definitely worth giving a try, and I will say that I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and regardless of whether or not I can make content on this going forward, I will still be trying to play, and hopefully I can find some video ideas for something in the future. I know there's not a lot of content to look at through here. But going into a little bit of the memory talk. So what I'm doing here is part of the event I could grind out each day, and I'm basically changing the event currency in for specific 6-star memories, and the ones I'm getting are the Shakespeare set. I only really need 4 pieces. I could buy the full 6 if I wanted to, but it doesn't give me anything past 4 pieces, so I would rather use this and then a 2-piece for some extra damage later on. But with all of these bought, I now have enough for the 4-piece set, which is going to up my damage a decent amount. Now, I don't know how much exactly it does extra, but it does state that it has a 20% chance when burning an enemy to actually inflict 100% fire damage in an explosion, which is really nice. It's going to be a little bit of added damage, and it's going to be a lot better than what I was currently using, because the other one was just a little bit of extra chance to ignite with an elemental ability or something. But with this, I'm actually moving on to some of the bigger memory cards, the ones that are going to be a little more effective, especially because I've been walking around with some of the weak ones that I started with very early on. But that's the cool thing about the memory sets. There are so many different ones, and each one has its own unique effects. Some of them are character specific, and some of them are just elemental specific. So you'll just basically grind out as many of the sets as you can. Maybe it will be in the future some more events that have more offerings for the memories to be able to trade in for specific 6-star ones, because otherwise you're going to have to go into some of the stages and hope for the drop chance, in which case mainly you may not get the specific one you're going for, so you're going to have to grind out quite a lot. Now, I didn't get to actually work with any of the resonance part of anything on here, the weapons nor the memories. Maybe I could do that with a smaller or a less rare memory, but I didn't worry about it at the time being, because I didn't figure it would be all that important. But as you can see, we got to chapter 11. Now, I had been stuck a little bit of time on chapter 9, like the start of chapter 9, just because one of the missions I kept running out of time on the last fight phase, just because I didn't do quite enough damage. But at this point, I'm doing quite a significant amount more, so it is getting a little bit easier for me to clear these missions, and obviously jumping up 2 whole chapters in the course of the week is pretty decent, though it doesn't sound like a lot. I had been focusing a lot of my energy on the event, so I didn't get a ton of clearing outside of that, but I am still a bit under the recommended power, but that really isn't a problem. As long as you've got some decent sets and you've got some decent damage, you should be perfectly fine. And that's one good aspect of it as well. They try to give you a good training guide, which I'll show a brief stint later on, but that one will give you a good idea of what you actually need to upgrade to get your character strong enough to be able to clear the content pretty quickly. And most of the stuff that I'm using are ones that I was just gifted early on. I basically got them at the start of the thing, and I just kept using them the whole time. I do have other options I could have swapped to, but I didn't want to do that, just basically so I could show just how good the starting characters can be for you and how far you can get with them in a short amount of time. But going into the actual talks of summoning. So here is the major aspect where it's going to be a little bit harder for free-to-play players. As you can see, I've got research 20 out of 60, so it means I've done 2 10 pulls on that one. I really shouldn't be pulling on these, but I went ahead and did it anyway, just for the sake of the video, because I like to try to show some off. And the Transcendent part I didn't really go full-fleshed into, because these are different versions of characters that are you can only pull in one in a mission, so I guess they're good for certain aspects, but I didn't really get to focus on them too much. I just used my regular characters most of the time. But there is a base version, which you can see I've got 31 out of 40 pulls, so I'm actually going to do a 10 pull here to show you what S rank character I'm going to get and show you what it normally looks like when you're pulling for these. So this one is basically for new players. You have a targeted search of the ones you're going to be able to get a better chance of getting an A rank from, and it's a guaranteed A rank in every 10 pull, which is really good. As I've said before, they can be useful for clearing content. They're not the greatest characters, but they do a good job at that. But the cost of everything, the cost of cards that you need is 2,500, which is quite expensive to say the least. I didn't get a whole lot of pulls over the duration of this free-to-play Is It Worth It series, which is a bit of a downside, but at the same time, not really necessary. If I'm not going for a specific one, I'm not too worried. But as you can see here, this is the one that I got the S rank that I pulled, Lucia, and she's actually really cool. I've used her a decent amount in the event because it gives you random heroes that you get to choose from, and I really like her kit. I think she has a really cool thing where you activate a 3-ping of the blue part of hers, and then you can go in and activate another 3-ping, and that's going to change all the ones you have into these white ones that you can use, that she swings a sword slash that basically flies at the enemy. It's really good damage and really fast, so I like them. But as you can see here, I have 3 different S ranks that I haven't even messed with, that all could be viable and all could be good options. Bianca's one that I really wanted to level up at some point. I just neglected working on her at all, but I do like her character design. I do like using her in some of the other events, and Lucia is also, of course, one I said that I would like to do. So in the future, if I do continue playing, I will be working on those. Karenina has been the one that has been the mainstay of my account. The first S rank that I get when you start as a new player, you get to choose from a certain pool of them, so you know, choose which one you like. Maybe look up which one is the best option for pulling out of these, but I like Karenina the best, so I went ahead and went with her, and she has been so good for me. She's helped me tremendously, and I actually think she does some pretty decent damage, so I am definitely happy with the choice that I made early on. And well, she's been sitting as my home screen operator since the start of the game, so I am very happy with her. She's basically my favorite character, regardless of what I've been able to use thus far. Though I do think there are some really cool options out there that I would have loved to have that I just haven't been able to get so far. But when it comes to resource farming, they do a good job of all of that. I think it's a little bit costly going for the higher ranks, but you do get a decent amount. So throughout the week, with as much energy as they give you, you have plenty of options for getting enough to level up whatever you're needing throughout the week. It's not going to be the easiest thing. You're going to have to make choices of which thing you're going to farm in specifics, because I think for the most part, when it comes to the mission rewards, there's not a lot of cogs usually associated with them. One thing I found weird was when you're completing story missions and you're 3-starring something, you don't necessarily get any of the cards that you can use for summoning with that. You just get like cogs and memory stuff for upgrading both weapons and memories. So a bit lackluster in that. I think for most gachas, generally when it comes to completing a stage at the max rarity and the max star level, you usually get the summoning currency, and so I'm sad to see that, because I think that would have really helped attract more people to the aspect of playing the game if you're getting that many rewards overall, because you're going to get a lot more pulls early on. And the biggest way to entice people into playing your game is making sure they can pull a lot of champions early on, because people like variety, people like trying out new things, adding new things to their roster, being able to have counters for certain situations. So one thing I think they should definitely add is that when you do the full chapter completion at all the highest rank that you can do, you should get a good amount of black cards from that. I will say though that from the stages when you do a first completion, you do get like 30 usually of the cards, which do stack up over time. So they are giving you them at least there, but just not as much as I think they should when it comes to the full completion. Now that fight you just saw take place and the current point system that I have here is actually some of the stages from the Warzone part. Now this is a good way of earning cards throughout the week and daily missions, and then it also gives you, depending on how many points you do and how many times you played Warzone throughout the week, you're getting a decent amount of extra cogs and upgrades for your characters. So it's plenty of different things that you can actually do throughout to really get as much resources as you possibly can. And they have a ton of options for playing the game. Not everything is going to cost stamina, so there are plenty of things you can do. As you can see here, that one costs 0. There are plenty of things you can do to actually go in and play even if you're out of energy, so you don't have to worry about, oh, I'm just doing my dailies, doing it for like 5 minutes and then I'm done. No, you can actually go in and do some other things while you're waiting for the energy to recover. If you are very much into the game, there are going to be plenty of options, but I'm not going to show you everything. I'm just kind of showing you some of the stuff that you can do as you're going through here. I didn't unlock the level 80 adaptation fitting stages. I think that's something to do with the cub part of the character, and I still don't know exactly what that does, but you have to get to level 80 for that. So it's unfortunate that I couldn't get to that, but it is what it is. I only have a certain amount of time that I can actually do these a day, so you know, maybe if you have more time you'll be able to get that pretty quick, and I think you can actually get to level 80 in a really short span of time if you're really putting the effort in each day. But here is one of the little mini events that I was talking about. You're just doing these dice rolling as you're collecting these things per day, and you just roll and you get some decent rewards out of it. The last reward being 50 of the cards that you need for somebody, so you got 100 from the whole thing. Just something really short that you can do that is going to give you some good rewards. And as you can see here, Phantom Cage and Warzone both give you a bunch of these summoning cards, so it is a good way every weekly reset to be able to get a decent amount. You're going to have to save up, like I said, quite a bit to get your guaranteed pulls, but between clearing content, doing your weekly missions, doing whatever events come up, eventually you're going to have what you need for your guaranteed pull. But I'm going to show you a little bit of what the Phantom Pain looks like, and it is pretty easy if you've actually done some of the fights before. Now, I don't have the best scores on this. Obviously, some of these that I'm doing the auto clear for are from a while back where I didn't have quite as good of options for some of my champs, but it just goes to show how easy they make it for you to be able to earn your weekly pulls. So a very good option, but I'm going to show you one of the fights as well, just so you can see what it looks like switching to my actual useful team, because the other ones were ones that I had done early on and they are not going to be able to take out this one very easily. So this is actually a boss that you see quite often when you're going through the story. I fought him multiple times, not just here, but also in the other thing. And sorry if you hear some weird noises, my cats are jumping all over my desk. I guess it's getting time for food. But as you can see here, do a matrix jaunt, which freezes time, allows me to do a 3 ping with only having one of them there, which is a good way of making sure that you get as much as you can out of your pings as possible. But then also doing a 3 ping, you can also summon the available unit that is corresponding to that color. As you can see, Nanami, the one with the yellow shader around her, if I do a 3 ping of the yellow element ability, then I'm going to be able to use Nanami, because her screen will be flashing. As you can see there, I click on her, then she comes out and throws out a skill, and I have her set up to do lower defense off of her normal attacks. So I believe it actually stacks in whenever she comes out like that, so I can get a little extra damage in to my main unit. So after completing that, I'm showing you the weekly rewards that you can get from doing a certain amount of damage. And as I said before, there's not a lot of great options there. They've got some nice, useful things for like the memory overclocking shards, but for the cogs, it's not very much for an actual weekly reward, which is a bit strange. Cogs are not the hardest thing to come by, but they are very underwhelming when it comes to the regular missions. So we're coming up on the final part of this video, and this is going to be the full Hamlet fight. Obviously, it's going to be a little sloppy. I'm just trying to showcase a lot of different things and show you kind of the animations of what he does, because it is very, very nice. So I'll get hit a few times, you'll see me fly in the air, you'll see some slow motion slams from him and stuff. It's really, really nice, but I wanted to full showcase this and just let everybody see, you know, what the capability of what their boss fights look like. This is a very, very nice and well thought out boss fight. So while the boss fight is playing, I'm going to talk about the overall experience. So when it comes to the music, I do like the music. I think it's very fitting in most situations. It's not the greatest thing ever, but it is pertinent to most of the content. And I think some of the later events and stuff, later stages, have some really good music. Usually you can see as a gacha kind of fully develops and starts to get a really big community, then you start to get a little bit more effort and money put into specific situations. So I think the story moving from certain later chapters, it gets really, really good. I think it's got a nice bit of backstory. There's a lot of side events that give extra story to it, a lot of side story as well. Character story specifically, you can go in and check out the backstory, the younger days of some of these characters. And so there is a fully fledged out universe in this with good music, good animation, and I think the game just delivers in all fronts. The only downside being the fact that it's a little bit harder for free-to-play players to have all the characters, because realistically it's a bit hard to get the stuff that you need as a free-to-play. But as I've said before, and as I've said in many videos, you just don't necessarily have to have all the characters to have a good team clear. So take everything with a grain of salt. The way you play and the way you do things is going to be a little different from what I do. Obviously, going on your own path and forming your own opinions for these games is the most essential thing. I can only help so much in this, but if there's anything that I can leave you with on this, is the fact that this game definitely goes to try to hold your attention and try to show you that they really do care about what they make, and they're going to put in as much effort as they can to bring you a great experience. So I can say personally, for everyone, I highly recommend trying this game out. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but at least you will have the option of seeing for yourself just what this is capable of. If you're somebody that's more into the less interactive playstyle when it comes to combat systems and gacha, then it's probably not the best option for you. I know a lot of people are into a lot of strategy-based games, and there are a lot of good ones out there, and hopefully with some of the games that are coming out in the near future that look really promising, we can find something really good that is going to satisfy most people. But in the meantime, I will continue to grind and continue to do as many of these different series as I possibly can to try to give you an overall perspective of what I think about these. But if you have a favorite game that I haven't played in one of these series before that you would like to see me do, feel free to leave a comment. I am always very happy when I see a bunch of comments on my videos, and getting to respond to people and talk to them in the comments is one of my favorite things to do. No matter how much time it takes me each day, I very much enjoy it. I do promise on that. But with the video slowly coming to an end, I guess I should ask the question, free to play, is it worth it? I think absolutely. I think this game is fantastic, and I hope that you give it a try. But this has been The Last Musketeer, and I hope to see you in the future. Peace.